everyone. How are you doing today? So today I just wanted to talk about the topic of how young men, or just men in general, can embrace their masculinity and just kind of break free from this modern idea that masculinity is bad and toxic, and just how men can kind of reclaim their place in this world. Because in the modern world, it's not a secret. Everyone knows it that masculinity is constantly under attack by many different forces, just the general culture, the government, feminism, all these different forces that just try to make men feel like they don't have a place in the world, like their masculinity is bad. And so I just want to make this video to go over a few things that, most men or the average guy can do to start kind of reclaiming their masculinity and just embracing their role as a man in this world. So to start with, I would say the first thing that every guy needs to do is to reclaim your body. Your body is really the source of a lot of issues when it comes to a man. So there's your testosterone, there's working out, there's food. So let's go over all of them. So to start with, you want to make sure you're fueling your body in the proper way, where you're eating food that's actually going to make you stronger, that's actually going to nourish you and make you healthy. There's so many foods out there full of complete crap, full of estrogen mimicking compounds, tons of sugars, all these things that don't fuel your body in the right way. And it's important because as a man, you need to actually be strong. The part of masculinity is being strong. You need to actually be able to exert yourself to be able to be useful in the world, to protect and to provide, and to just be strong. Part of your job as a man is to be strong. Now, part of that whole being strong thing and having a capable body is working out. So really fitness, not just fitness, because there's a lot of fitness, advice out there. You go to the gym and build these muscles and be a bodybuilder and all this crap. You don't need to do any of that as a man. What you really need to do is you need to train. You need to physically train your body, not just work out, not just chase fitness, not just chase a good looking body. Although you will look better having worked out and trained, but you really need to train for something. You need to train to be capable, to have a capable body, whether it's you want to protect someone. So you're going to learn martial arts, or you're going to learn, you're going to train in a functional way that actually, gives you real world strength, you're going to, uh, or you're going to train for some kind of sport, some kind of competition, or you just want to train in a way that actually uses your body for something, not just simply moving weight, not just simply going to the gym to build muscle and to look better, to take better Instagram pictures. You want to actually be functional. Part of being a man, part of masculinity is being functional. You don't just look a certain way. You don't just appear a certain way. You don't just present in a certain way. You actually do something. You're actually functional. So you want a functional body, whether it's a martial art, whether it's training like a soldier, whether it's training with a particular purpose for sport or something. You just want to have a capable body that can actually do something in this world. And so this whole thing of nutrition, training, avoiding certain contaminants in your food, all these different things will affect your body. It'll affect your strength, your testosterone, even the way you think. It'll clear up a lot of brain fog. These are all very important to sort of reclaiming your masculinity in a sense of feeling more like a man in your own body. Because frankly, a lot of men don't today because they're sedentary. It's another thing. Don't live a sedentary life. Don't You want to always be moving, always be training, always be doing something with your body. Don't become stagnant. So that's all with regards to your physical body. You really want to build that foundation. If we're talking about sort of masculinity as a pyramid here, that's going to be the base of the pyramid. It's going to be your physical body, your physical training, and the food you feed yourself. Because right now, modern culture, modern society just does not do a good job of giving men the food that they properly need or teaching them the fitness that they actually need to feel like men. So that's the first part. Second part is men need a brotherhood. You need a fellowship. You need friends. You need something beyond just acquaintances and peers, not people that you just see every day, and not people that you call friends. People who you could actually call a brotherhood. People who you can truly depend on. Now, for different men, this comes from different sources. It could be a sport, it could be school, it could be your job, it could be really from anywhere. But you really need to find men that you can rely on and men who you can actually kind of fight side by side with. This is important because men really do bond shoulder to shoulder and side by side, not really face to face. We're kind of taught as men in this modern culture that, we have to, be super empathetic and compassionate and open up about everything, but that's really not how the male brain was built by evolution to function. We're built to do things. We're built to work with other men side by side, not really talk face to face. Otherwise, although when you do get close with some men, you will eventually fall into that kind of face to face relationship. That won't be the primary driver of it, and it won't be something you do with most men. Most male relationships, most male friendships and brotherhoods will be formed side by side. So you want to find some kind of it really could be anything: sport, martial art, could be even people that you find online playing video games, even though it's not a fantastic outlet for it. It could turn into something. But you want to just find places where you're doing something that has some kind of risk, some kind of, stakes, something you work on together as men. You form a brotherhood. That way you can help each other out. You can, pursue things together. A lot of your motivation as a man will come from friends and from brotherhood. We're really built to do things together as men. We're not solitary creatures, and that's even though it's partly in our nature as men to kind of seclude ourselves and to separate ourselves from the world. We're a bit more introverted that way. We still derive a lot of purpose and a lot of drive from being in a brotherhood. So you really want to foster those relationships where you can, wherever you can. Now, the third tip I want to give men or young men in particular is you should pursue money. Now, I know this is controversial because pursuing money in the modern age kind of has this connotation that, it's evil and it's shallow and you only do it because you want luxury goods. None of that is relevant to masculinity. You don't chase money because it's about going to the club or partying or just getting a bunch of beautiful women. All that's idiotic and pointless. You don't want to pursue any of that as a man. What you want to pursue money as a man is because it's an extension of your virtue. It's an extension of what you can do in this world. You can think of money like reach or a function that extends your strength and extends your ability to influence this world. So, for example, the most common one for most men, and a very good goal, one thing we need to prioritize more, is family foundation. You really want to, at some point, be able to provide for a family, provide for a wife, provide for kids, and just be able to accumulate resources for the family. It's very important. It's your role as a man, it's your evolutionary natural role, and it's really something that you should prioritize. You shouldn't think of money as something that is evil or something that is not worth pursuing. I kind of fell into that trap for a little while, thinking that money was kind of a waste of time, but it really took kind of a mindset shift to say, no, money is a very neutral thing. It's not good or bad on its own. It's just a tool that we use to pursue things in this world or to change the world around us. So there's nothing wrong, there's nothing bad about pursuing money. If anything, as a man, it's sort of your mandate to acquire resources and to use them in a productive way, either for a family, for children, for a wife, for changing the world in a better way. It's just money is simply neutral. It's a tool that you use to influence the world. Okay, so the next thing I think that men really need to start prioritizing more, it's kind of been lost to the sands of time, but it's something that men really need to start doing more. It's you really want to immerse yourself in some kind of virtuous work and study. So what I mean by that is typically men in history were taught, you know, the classics, they were taught philosophy and history and literature and all these different things. And it really cultivates you and it really teaches you more than just brute strength. 'Cause being a man is not about just strength alone. Strength is crucial. It's one of the main pillars of masculinity, but it alone is not enough. You need to cultivate something higher than that. You're not simply a brute. You're not simply just um, a monster. You want to actually cultivate some kind of virtue. So you could read philosophy, and that will give you some kind of guidance in terms of the moral landscape or just the social landscape. And you want to read, the great history. You want to understand the great men of history. You want to learn from them. You want to see what they did right, what they did wrong. There's so many great eras for men to study. Ancient Greece and Rome are obviously amazing eras that are always studied. You could study the founding of America. You could study the English Empire. Study even in the East. You could study the samurai, Japan, even China. Um, so there's so many great eras of history you can learn from. So many great areas of philosophy you can learn from, and really read them critically and read them in a way that you try to improve yourself. You're not simply acquiring knowledge, just for facts alone. You're actually trying to integrate these lessons into your life and incorporate them. And I think I know many of you out there might be thinking, you're not maybe you're not used to reading philosophy or history or classic literature, and you're thinking you're not up to the task. But at least try it. At least attempt to do it. And even if you don't get much around on your first read, you'll come back to them, you'll cultivate them. In many ways, it's like training the mind. The same way that you train your body, you're not going to immediately go to your first gym session and be able to do everything. You're going to struggle. It's going to be an acclimation period, and you're going to struggle. So it's going to be the same thing with mental work and study. But it's still absolutely crucial. You want to learn from the great men of history so that you yourself can be a great man. That's another thing. That's another part too about masculinity. You really want to strive for something great. Masculinity is not just about surviving. It's not just simply about, going through the motions of the day. It's not about just towing the line and doing what you're told. You really want to pursue something beyond yourself. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to change the entire world, but you want to aspire to something great, something that's worth achieving. You want to boldly enter into the world, and you want to try to achieve something that is worthwhile. Like you want to have, a great family. You want to make some great achievement. You want to make an influence on something. You want to mentor other people. You want to have some kind of influence that's beyond just, simple daily life. But, part of being a man is kind of chasing that greatness, that sense of achievement and that competition. There's nothing wrong with competition. This is another huge lie that we're kind of told as men in the modern world, is that competition is toxic or it's bad. And that's the exact competition. It's one of our main drivers as men is to compete. Um, not all competition is 100% fair, but still, the competitive spirit itself, whether it's fair or not, is deeply rooted in us, and we need to embrace it. We're not harmless creatures. We're built for chaos. We're built for danger. We're built to do things that are beyond just existing. And the next piece of advice I have is to really embrace responsibility as a man. Responsibility kind of has this dirty connotation to it because we kind of have this idea in the modern world that, freedom is at the top of the hierarchy. Everything is about autonomy and choice. And here's the thing, us as men, we don't really thrive in an environment of freedom. And when I say that, I'm not talking about tyranny. I'm not talking about authoritarianism. I'm not talking about freedom necessarily in the political sense. But I mean, we need some kind of duty, some kind of obligation, some kind of responsibility that binds us to this world. Us as men, we're very responsibility driven. We need to have a we need to be needed. Men are very necessity driven. If we're not needed, we don't really feel driven. That's part of the problem in the modern world, is that, we're not really needed anymore for anything. We live in very peaceful times, so there's nothing that requires us to defend it. We live in times where the economy is, everything's really prosperous and there's plenty of wealth to go around, so we're not really expected to compete and provide in the way that we used to in history. We're not even really seen as needed by a lot of women in terms of, being partners, or we're not really seen as being necessary in companies anymore, or even like in any way, even as citizens. So we really struggle with the sense of being needed and having responsibility in the modern world as men, but it's absolutely crucial to our drive and our well-being in this world. So what you really need to cultivate is finding some kind of obligation, finding something that needs you, that not just simply wants you to be around, or that benefits from your presence, but truly needs you, truly binds you, truly gives you something kind of responsibility, some kind of rock to stand on. And what that will do to you is that it will take away your freedom, sure, in terms of that you can't just do whatever you want. But we don't thrive in that kind of environment. We don't thrive in just hedonic pleasure where we just, do whatever the hell we want. You just feel pleasure. We really need something deeper than that. There's really a drive in us to dig deeper than that and to do something that's beyond just feeling, beyond just sensory pleasure. As a man, you don't just survive on pleasure. You survive on hardship. You survive on risk. You not only you just thrive, you thrive on these things. And we're not taught to embrace any of this. So when you actually embrace these things, what you'll find is like you genuinely are engaged in the world. You genuinely want to contribute. You genuinely want to be a part of things. You actually feel a drive to wake up and to build and to be a part of things. Because right now in the modern world, we just don't really feel that as men. Everyone is, a lot of men are porn addicted, or they're addicted to junk food, or they're sedentary, or they just want to passively play video games. And there's nothing wrong with leisure as a man. Leisure is as old as history. But the problem is you can't replace responsibility and productive work with leisure as a man. You got to know leisure's place. Leisure takes place after productivity. And when I say all this, by the way, I'm not expecting you to be a CEO of a company or to be worth millions of dollars. All these things. We're not expecting any of that from men. What we're expecting is that them is to just have a genuine place in this world where you're beyond mere pleasure. You're beyond mere uh, existing. There's something more to your existence than just. So this next point I have to talk about is you really want to avoid sort of the toxic feminist culture, and particularly toxic feminist women themselves in the modern day. And I know this sounds very controversial, but it's true. There's so many forces that as a man you're exposed to every day that just makes you feel ashamed of who you are as a person. Your identity as a man, your masculinity. It's not something shallow. It's not something that you know can just be taken away or can just be browbeaten out of you, or it's not something optional. It's essential to who you are as a person. It's core to your identity. You know, being a man, being masculine, these are not optional things in a sense. They're things that are really called of you. They're things that you have a drive towards. You should be pursuing these things, but the culture really tries to beat it out of you. You really have to kind of just ignore those influences. You have to really like you have to really search and kind of just understand, try to learn as much as you can about what the hell is going on, so that you can break away from it. Particularly when it comes to something like men's mental health, we're always taught, well, what men need is to open up more and to be in more compassionate environments and do all this. And really, these feminists are talking from a woman's perspective. They're thinking that what women need is what men needs, but it's the exact opposite. Like I've said earlier in this video, men don't thrive in these environments of comfortableness and softness and cushiness and safeness. Like, we are designed to be in conflict with the world, be in conflict with sometimes with each other, and we have hierarchies. We compete. We pursue dangerous things. We risk. Sometimes we work together. Sometimes we fight. But part of the reason why men are facing so many mental health issues is that they're not allowed to embrace their masculinity. But when you actually finally do start embracing your masculinity, you realize that a lot of these mental health issues weren't really mental health issues. They were more alignment issues. You didn't feel aligned with not only yourself, but the world. You feel like there was a part of you that just wasn't being awakened, that it was just dormant, or not even that it was dormant, that it was trying to be beaten out of you. But you can't beat masculinity out of men. It's just not possible. It's part of our genetics, it's part of our biology, it's part of who we are as human beings. So when the modern culture tries to teach you these things, you have to actively resist them. There's going to be a lot of, women in your life. It could be a girlfriend that maybe you might have to rethink whether she's a right fit for you, or it could be your mom who's trying to teach you these things, or it could just be women in general that you're around, or anything. And I'm not saying you need to burn down relationships, or get rid of friends, but you need to really kind of stand up for yourself as a man. You need to kind of push back and just say, no, this is who I am, and this is what I'm proud of, and I'm not going to apologize for being masculine. And this is a part of it too. As men, we need to stop apologizing for being masculine. It feels like every time we try to talk about masculinity, or we try to show it, that we have to kind of, cushion it and put a bunch of disclaimers and saying like, oh, we're not doing this to women. We're not trying to be this way. We're not trying to come off as this way. We need to stop apologizing for everything we do. We need to stop looking for permission to be men, to be masculine. Like, we're allowed to do these things because they're a part of who we are, and none of them are inherently bad. Like, have men in the past and today done bad things to society and women? Of course. All human beings of every group have done horrible things to society at some point. That doesn't mean we completely burn down their identity. Men have done amazing things too. They've built society basically from the ground up physically. They've won many wars. They've protected many people. They've fed many people. They've, provided for so many. We've come up with so many amazing ideas. There's so many things to be proud of as a man, and masculinity is such an amazing force if it's wielded in a virtuous way. But you can't be afraid of being strong, of asserting yourself, of wanting to be competitive and just wanting to be a man. Don't let society try to beat the masculinity out of you. You got to actively resist that kind of force. And it's going to be everywhere. You go to a workplace and there's DEI posters everywhere, and they celebrate women all the time, but they don't never celebrate men. You go to schools and you're taught about toxic masculinity and how amazing feminism is, and you go on YouTube and you see all these commentators talking about all the toxic aspects of men, and you see these you know viral movements like the Me Too movement, all this stuff, and you got to really just find a way to have selective deafness about these different things that are going on. You need to actively choose to not learn their lesson. You have to actively choose to fight again, not just ignore them. You have to also just like fight against it. You have to disagree. Part of what we do as men too is we're disagreeable. When we see things that aren't true, we see things that are bullshit or unjust. We fight back against it. We don't just passively sit by. We try to correct things. We try to set things right. Try to bring order to chaos. So that's what we need to do when we're seeing all this bullshit that is in our culture. We need to fight back against it. We need to speak up. We need to say no. We're going to be men. And no, it's not a bad thing. We're not going to apologize for it. And beyond just the tips I have, I also just have some overarching themes for masculinity that I think would be useful for some of you guys. So one thing, you really want to think of masculinity as sort of the combination of strength and virtue. So you have your strength that sort of manifests itself in many different ways. It can be physical strength or physical endurance or just physical ability. It can also be your mental ability, your intelligence, your problem solving. It could be your decisiveness, your disagreeableness, your articulation, your ability to debate. Any way that you can just show capacity and competence in the world, physical or mental or social or any way. That's part of your strength as a man. It's part of your skill, your ability, your competence, your capacity. And then there's your virtue. There's your moral side, things that orient you towards the good, the ethical, because you don't want to just be a brute. If you just have strength with no virtue, you're just a brute, you're just a tyrant. um, but also on the flip side, if you're just virtuous with no strength, you're impotent, you're useless. You can't exert any influence in the world, you can't do anything. So it doesn't matter how good of a man you are if you can't actually do anything. So you really want to think of masculinity as sort of the combination between strength and virtue. There's many other ways to cultivate that too. There's discipline, physical and mental discipline. You really want to have direction and purpose. You don't need to, change everything and be the greatest man who ever lived, but you do need some kind of a direction and purpose and something that you're going to achieve in this world. And really, there's also the service to something higher, which is extremely important, and just the ability to from an evolutionary perspective, just be that protector, provider, masculine role that everyone talks about, everyone calls is toxic, but it's not. It's just a part of who we are as men. So really, the overarching message too of this video just needs to be just stop apologizing for being masculine. Don't let people make you feel guilty for being masculine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being masculine. So go out there, go and cultivate your masculinity. Don't apologize for it. Don't feel ashamed of it, and simply uh, embrace your life as a man because it's what you were built for. It's good, and you can change the world for the better. You'll make your life better and your community and the world better. So let me know what you guys think. If I need to add anything to, this definition of masculinity, what your thoughts are, and I hope you have a great day.